In this lesson, we'll be going through the parabola, which is one of the four main functions in grade 12, and it's assessed in the prelims and the final exams. And really, the parabola is a very charismatic and a very colorful graph. It has a lot of character. So we'll be starting with sketching the graphs, and then we'll be building our knowledge in that way, so that we don't have any knowledge gaps when we come to determining the equation and really doing deductions and interpretations of functions. So I suppose we're given the question that says the graph of f of x is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 8, and we're asked to sketch the graph of f, indicating all intercepts with the axis. So they say all, meaning that they need to see the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts. And because we have two axes, the vertical axis, which is the y-axis, and the horizontal axis, which is the x-axis, and also the turning point where the graph will change direction. So to be able to proficiently answer this question, we really need to know some basics, and by the end of this lesson we should be able to calculate efficiently x-intercepts and the y-intercepts, and be able to calculate the turning point, shortened as TP, and then this will enable us to be able to sketch our graph. So we'll be going through these three knowledge platforms. So first things first, I'd like to also give you a quick review of the standard equation of a parabola or a quadratic, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, right? And a tells us the shape of the graph. If a is positive, the graph will be smiling, and a is negative, it automatically becomes sad. So it does have some emotion to it. And really c and the sign in front of it is usually tells us the y-intercept. The y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0 and the y-coordinate is c. Also note, you always take the sign in front of the c. If it's positive, you take positive. If it's negative, it will be negative. So we can just write here plus minus. And b really is an interesting character. B is typically used to calculate what we call the axis of symmetry, which is a line that really divides the graph into two equal parts. And we will use this value of b to calculate really the turning point, and we'll be using this formula. If you're mindful, you can just write it down, because we'll be using it to calculate the turning point in a few minutes. So we use this b value really to calculate the turning point of the graph, and this will be our hack for calculating the turning point. So in essence, we just gave you a quick screenshot or schematic of the character of the parabola, and we'll be using this really to answer this whole question. So let's quickly dive in and let's have some fun. So first things first, we'll be calculating or determining the x-intercept of this graph. To determine the x-intercept, what do we need to do? We need to equate y to 0, and then we solve or isolate for x. So we're going to be using this really equation, meaning that where there's y, we substitute 0. We'll have x squared minus 2x minus 8 equated to 0. I just rewrote it so that it looks much easier. So we have a quadratic here, so we need to find the factors of 8 that we should add or subtract. That will give us negative 2, or that we should multiply. That will give us negative 8. So we're looking for factors, so we open two brackets, equated to 0. We write x and x. The factors will be 4 and 2. And negative 4 plus 2 gives us negative 2. Negative 4 times positive 2 will give us negative 8. So therefore, x will be equals to 4. So x will be equals to negative 2. So I highly recommend that we write this in coordinate form. This will enable us, so that this will make it easy for us to sketch. Remember, we said y is equals to 0, meaning that the y coordinates for both of them will be 0. And the x coordinate, this will be negative 2, and for the other one will be 4, which means that this graph will intersect the x-axis at 2 points, 4 is to 0, and negative 2 is to 0. So let's move on to calculate the y-intercept. So the y-intercept, as in the introduction, there's a quick way of determining the y-intercept and the long way. I'll show you both. To determine the y-intercept, x needs to be equated to 0. And we solve for y in our equation, meaning that we'll have y is equals to 0 squared minus 2, 0 minus 8. Therefore, y is equals to 0 squared is 0 minus 2 times 0 is 0. Therefore, we'll be left with negative 8. And we have to write this in coordinate form. We said x is equals to 0, our x coordinate will be 0, and our y coordinate will be negative 8. And when I started, remember I mentioned that the value, or the c value, of this graph is negative 8. So therefore, the y-intercept can simply be written as 0 is to that c value, the sign in front of it, meaning that this is a y-intercept. So we can quickly read it off from the graph, or we can calculate it. Either or. It's always better to know two routes to the same destination. And let's calculate, lastly, a turning point. And a turning point is a quick formula we can use for a turning point. There's a quick hack, and it says minus b over 2a, and 4ac minus b squared over 4a. And really we just take the values of a, b, and c, and then we substitute them in. So if you're wondering where we get the values of a, b, and c, remember our graph is given by x squared minus 2x minus 8. Our a value is positive. There's no number written there, it means it's positive 1. Therefore a will be 1, and our b value is minus 2. Our c value is negative 8. So we just substitute all these values, and we calculate what our turning point will be. Our b is negative 2, or 2 times a, which is 1. It's 4a and c minus b squared, all divided by 4a. And our turning point, if you plug everything into the calculator, we get that turning point is 1 is to negative 9. So in essence, we've calculated x-intercept, the y-intercept, and we found what the turning point is. Now we just need to sketch our graph. And to sketch our graph, we really need two things. You need to sketch two vertical lines. If you're not already given really the Cartesian plane, you need to sketch two vertical lines. The vertical line is your y-axis, and the horizontal line is your x-axis. So we can quickly label our graph. Vertical line is our y-axis, and the horizontal line is our x-axis. So let's just have some fun and label these points A, B, C, and D. Just doing this so that it's easy to represent in our Cartesian plane. So 4 to 0 lies on the right hand side of the Cartesian plane where x is positive. And negative 2 to 0 lies on the left hand side of the Cartesian plane where x is negative. 0 to negative 8 lies at the bottom of the y-axis where y is negative. And allow me to introduce another concept. So to sketch the turning point, I'd like to also introduce something called the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is just a vertical line really that divides the parabola into two equal parts. So we know that the x coordinate there will be 1, and at some point below we know that your graph turns at negative 9, and negative 9 is below 8. So turning point will be somewhere there where 1 is to negative 9. So let's quickly sketch our graph and see how it will look. So it should pass the y-axis, should pass the turning point, should pass the x-axis. So our graph should more or less look like that, where we're going to get a mark showing that it passes the x-intercept -2 and 4, passing the y-intercept -8, and also passes the turning point where it changes direction. And also you get a shape for we get a mark for the shape of the graph. Remember we said the A determines the shape of the graph. By shape meaning that, remember we said A is equals to +1, and that's why our graph is in a good mood and it's smiling. So in a sense we would have answered this question by indicating all the intercept with the x's and the turning point. And just to quickly recap, we'd said that we learned how to calculate the x-intercept, we learned how to calculate the y-intercept, and also I showed you a quick hack of calculating the turning point. Just to reiterate, formula was minus b over 2a, 4ac minus b squared, all divided by 4a. And this is the formula really, if you need a proof to this. I've shown it in my study guide that I've written, Crack the Maths Code, grade 12. You can see how I generated this formula. And we learned how to really substitute the values of a, b, and c, determine the turning point, and really we sketched our graph. And that will be the lesson for today.